Welcome to You Dab Me a Hello. This is RJ. I'm here with Mike and Andy, and we are here to do our second live interview. I'm super excited. How about you guys?
I'm very excited.
Nice. We have somebody here today who is a graphic designer, among many other things, and his name is Richard Fonseca. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you are coming to us from Antarctica. Now, forgive me. You're in Rhode Island or Massachusetts or neither of those?
I'm in Massachusetts, actually. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So we're here to talk about all things wrestling and probably more. But this is, again, our second live interview. For the people who are joining us live, thank you very much. You're either on YouTube or Facebook or even Twitch, which we are on for that one viewer we get every week. So we appreciate you. But Mike, thanks for joining us again as our essentially taking over my job at some point. So I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, that was discussed beforehand. Andy had no say. So thanks for hiring me and also not paying me still.
I thought it was to take over my job for when the stress just finally is too much and I'm done.
You keep making those comments that we got to edit out, and maybe he will. But for now, it's me. I'm the one having the baby in 2 weeks. Well, not me, my wife.
No, you're showing.
I'm showing. Mike has already said that he's taking over. We're not taking a break. If I'm gone, he's taking over. So
that's right.
He's probably gonna take over both of us. We'll just both leave.
It's just me.
It's just you. You just take it.
One dad me at hello. That's what it is. But
yep.
I dad me at hello.
Well, Andy, Mike, do you want to introduce kind of what or why we are interviewing Rick today? Sorry.
Yeah, so first off, I've known Rick for a while, but not super well, but I met him through a mutual friend, Ed Sherman, at a Memorial Day cookout that no longer happens due to COVID. Shout out to the Three Dudes and Cold Brews guys, Ed, Ray, Steve, miss you guys. And Rick and I pretty much just hung out, talked about music. I wrote a couple articles, for heavy metal textbooks, which was yours at the time. And then obviously, you have a huge history with wrestling and we talk about wrestling all the time. So, your name came up in conversation when I thought about having someone else on. So, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I was just checking your podcast out. I think the comedy, 2000s comedy
nice.
podcast that you did last. So I was like, all right, let me get some background on what you guys talk about.
It's a good sign that you came back.
No, but like Michael said, we kind of collaborated on some musical blog stuff, and we've known each other for a while now, but we haven't really hung out or anything like that. But we worked on a bunch of stuff with the metal blog that I had going on. I kind of got away from that and I focused more of my attention on the designing and illustrating for the wrestlers. So, but I have a writer that actually took over the blog, so it's still in publication, but it's just I'm not really involved that much anymore. So.
He's pulling one of our moves, just like pass it off.
Yep. Yeah. It works too.
So, I'm sure you and Mike can go on about metal for about 5 hours longer than I'd want to hear it. So just kidding. But let's dive kind of into your graphic design work and your behind the scenes stuff with wrestling. So, do you want to give kind of a little maybe mini autobiography on you and kind of what you've done?
Sure. So I was in college for illustration and was always a huge fan of wrestling since I was a kid. Since I think I was looking at my cards today, and it was like 1983 was the first show I went to. So that's going back a long ways. So I've got to see every kind of different era of how wrestling's changed and it's become sports entertainment over the years. And I always loved it, but I was like, oh, imagine if I could combine my love of art and wrestling together. And it's like, it was a no-brainer, but at the same time, I was like, you get that fear in the back of your head, like, can I combine those two and still love them as much? Or is it going to become like a job? And at some point, it did start to become a job, and I stepped away a little bit and kind of refocused on what I really wanted to do. But I always thought of it as I'm giving back to the industry that kind of gave me so much growing up. And it just started as a whim that I was part of a backyard wrestling organization that was in Rhode Island, early 2000s. I just became a referee for them. My first match, I bumped on Tax face first. Tax all over me. It was like a shock. And like, that's not the first bump that you want to take, but years later, I moved away and I came back, and we decided, we're gonna like push this backyard into an actual ring. So we started renting rings around Rhode Island, and I thought, if we're gonna take it serious, why don't we have some flyers made and some like posters and T-shirts? And I was the only one that kind of was dealing with art at the time, so I was like, I'll start doing 1 or 2 T-shirts for people. The funny thing is, Colt Cabana just started his podcast. It was talking about a business called 1 Hour Tees, which was out of Chicago. So our friend Gary DeAngelis was the first guy who's like, hey, I want a T-shirt. And I do you know anybody that prints? I'm like, well, Colt Cabana says is a T-shirt place in Chicago. So let's, pay extra amount of money for shipping. And we had one shirt made. So it was like $30 for a shirt. And it started out from there. A good friend, Puma, who's since passed away, really kind of got behind me after shows and said, this is fantastic what you're doing. You could actually, maybe make a career out of this. And I was like, nah, we're just having fun renting rings. But as it was towards the midpoint of what we were doing, which wasn't completely serious, we didn't have an audience. We just we were doing it kind of for ourselves. I kind of took it a little bit more serious and went, why don't I take a seminar? Came to find out it was more of a marketing workshop. And Steve Carino, who was at the time, he was my favorite wrestler out of ECW. He had put on some shows in Rhode Island, East Providence. So talked to him. I kind of had it planned in my head, like I knew it was his birthday. So I was like, I got him like a baseball card that I knew that he was like into the like Steve Carlton. So for his birthday, like I gave him a card. Like I went back after the seminar. Everybody's like leaving, and I'm like, let me go back. And I just briefly said, hey, if you ever need anything in the future, I do art, and I do ref, and I'm not serious about the reffing that much, but it's important that I kind of learn something about this industry. And a couple of weeks later, Steve and I just started writing emails to each other about different projects he had. That spinned into starting to work for people for Ring of Honor. Started working for him for Ring of Honor. He had a huge kind of like his retirement matches involving Kevin Sullivan, who was one of my favorite wrestlers from the Boston area that ever came through wrestling. So come to find out that the stuff we were working on actually went through Kevin Owens' hands too. Like he actually kind of oversaw some of the logo and was like, hey, why don't you add the Evil logo? So that was the logo they both had tattooed on their arms. So it was like, that gave me major confidence. Like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, that's awesome.
WWE guys, that's just crazy how important that was to start off. And then it snowballed for the last 10 years. Worked for every major organization at one point. So
that's impressive, man. And just a little backstory on this is I had messaged Rick and said, hey, can you do you mind sending me a list of some of the guys you work with, some of the organizations? And he says, sure, I'll send you a short list. And it's like half a page. I was like, that's the short list? Damn.
I feel like I should have wore a different shirt. I have oh man, what was the 01 promotion that Steve Carino helped run in the States? World One?
Yes.
Was that what it was called?
Yep.
Is that where we saw Masato Tanaka?
It was
yeah.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
a great show.
That was a great
Yes,
show.
I was there too.
Oh,
man.
nice. Okay.
I found the
Steve
shirt in my
brought-
basement.
Yeah, Steven brought that. They did a cancer charity in Fall River on Main Street in this old building. They had a ring that was falling apart. Like I brought my father. Of course, I'm in my backyard. Guys are all there, and they start doing a chant for me as I walk in the room. My father's looking at me like, "People know you." Ox Baker was singing in the hallway.
Ox Baker was at every indie show.
Yeah.
So
Yep, he was putting
man, I
everybody
remember
in
that.
headlocks. Yep.
That was a really good show. Jerry Lynn was there.
Yeah.
I remember CM Punk, Low Key was there. So like Low Key at that point
yeah.
was like my favorite wrestler, and I'd never met him.
Chris was there too.
Yeah. So I went to the restroom and they didn't have any paper towels like most places that run indie shows. So I come out of the bathroom, my hands are all dripping wet, and Low Key walks by me. I was like, this is my only opportunity to like say something to him. So I was like, oh hey, Low Key, and he turns around, he's like, hey, and he sticks his hand out to shake, and my hands are just dripping wet, and I was like, I just looked down and went, oh man, I was like, no paper towels, and he went, and just shrugged his shoulders and walked away. So that is my best interaction with a pro wrestler. Actually, no, the best one was Daniel Bryan, who my first Ring of Honor show that I went to in Mass was coming. It was raining outside. He like went out a door and he's just wearing his little white undies, and we're like, American Dragon, and he's like, oh, it's awfully cold to be in your underwear. I gotta go inside, and he just ran in. Oh, good stuff.
That's awesome.
So
that 0-1, my friend got pushed by CM Punk.
Really?
CM Punk just walked by and just pushed him back into his seat. And he's like, that's my claim to, of that night was I got pushed by CM Punk into a chair. He's like, happy. That's just the way all of us were. We were just like, if we weren't part of the show, even that is in the indie show, it wasn't fun. So
yeah.
Man.
That's awesome.
I forgot all about that show. That was great.
So, like most of us, we started watching wrestling when we were kids. What was really the event that made you fall in love with wrestling? Or was there like a pay-per-view? Was it one particular thing? What made you keep coming back?
Oh, well, it was definitely the Jimmy Snuka incident that happened with Ray Stevens pile driving on the floor, and then they had the big red X across the screen. That cemented wrestling for me forever. Like after seeing that, there was no turning back. Like it was so realistic at the time. He had just turned face, had a manager, offer him to like, I'll manage you for your career, and then he just gets turned on by his ex tag team partner, and just gets pile drived on the floor like 3 or 4 times, and there's a big X across the screen. Like as a kid, you're like, what am I seeing? Like, am I allowed to see this? After that, I just
saw a murder on TV.
Yeah. It was like, after that, I was like, I'm hooked. Like, I got to see what happens next week, So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it was Shawn Michaels kicking Marty Jannetty through the glass.
That was huge.
That was awesome.
My earliest one would have to be WrestleMania 10 with Shawn Michaels and Razor.
That's a good one too.
Mine was just my uncle beating the crap out of me as a child while we watched wrestling, and he's like practicing wrestling moves. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna put you in a small package and you tie me in a knot and just leave me there."
That can go 2 ways, You can never want to watch wrestling ever.
No, I was like, "This is cool. All right."
That's the part that gets edited out of this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounded wrong. No, it was not like that. I also have pictures of me. So you say Jimmy Snuka. I have pictures of me. I was probably like 3 or 4, jumping off the couch, doing the Jimmy Snuka "I love you" sign, jumping onto my uncle, and he had like a pillow over his private area because I always drop knees right on him. And that is a classic picture that I actually had my daughter do to me.
So you've been watching wrestling for 30 years ish, coming up in the 2020s. What's your favorite era of wrestling? Was it when you first started watching it? Was it when the Attitude Era came around? Was it the Ruthless Aggression Era? Was it today's time? Tell us a little bit about kind of what your favorite era of wrestling is.
I mean, prior to realizing it was a work, that was the best era. Growing up, you don't have anything to complain about, like, I know this is scripted, whatever. You believe everything you see, even when the commentators are like, who is this guy? And you just saw him like last week on NWA. So that was my, but I'm not one of those guys that's like, that was the best era, because we jumped ahead, and then after the whole Hogan, comes out, he's on steroids, all that stuff. Everything, the industry kind of like took a downturn right across the board. And I think we all at that age, growing up, were kind of like, all right, it's kind of embarrassing to kind of like admit that you're a wrestling fan, because right now everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
My father and I kind of rebonded over wrestling right away. Like, holy shit, this is just, this is real stuff, real reality, like a guy being mad at his boss and all this stuff. And then it kind of just, that era kind of rolled into the ECW stuff. Like my father's a lot older than I am. We both went to ECW shows and enjoyed it the same as when I was younger. So it always brings back, like, wrestling goes in cycles. And right now I think is probably the most athletic people ever in wrestling right now. But I think the storylines are a little, wishy-washy, and I think we're in a down swing at this point. I don't know who's going to come around, because CM Punk was like literally like the last guy that made those waves in the way that Austin did. So
yeah, I used to catch. I wish I would have been around for the ECW shows in the Northeast. I kind of caught it on the back end. My friend Dale was like, because I wasn't watching wrestling at that point, but he's like, hey, you got to see this promotion, ECW. He's like, sleep over my house. He's like, comes on at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the Spanish channel. He's like, just stay up. And I remember just watching it, having no idea what was being said, but seeing like Sabu and Tad, like all these guys. I was like, what is this? This is ridiculous. So that kind of started sparking my interest a little bit more into wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as silly as it sounds, was the video games kind of brought me back. So, the Super Nintendo, and then, the PlayStation 1 games, they were so easy to pick up and play that you were playing them so often. And now you wanted to see these guys, every week on TV doing the stuff that you were doing in the video game, because the video games were so over the top. Now it's, you want to see the Hardys jumping off ladders on TV. You want to see the guys getting speared through tables and stuff like that. And that's kind of what brought me back into it. And again, I've sort of fallen in and out of love with, the WWE product, just as anybody else has, I think. But, going to the Ring of Honor shows, Andy and RJ and I would pop into those shows all the time. Any local stuff that would come around, and now seeing a lot of those guys up in the majors, it has kind of, kept me entertained, saying, hey, I've seen these guys before. We lost Rick.
Well, while we're waiting, just want to let you know, we also do a bunch of other things, including a new song that got released.
That's what it takes to live this life without a curse of grief and all the strife of the night. Easier to transform your mind, retract those thoughts that plague your kind. We all come from the same place. We're all sinners without a trace. Now here I am.
If you're fans of us, you might recognize that song. And if you're fans of me from 28 years ago, you might remember that song as well. And you might be a stalker. But it's Death in Life, and it's available now on YouTube and Spotify. We have, 12, 13 songs released, maybe?
More than that now.
On Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you can get your streaming music. So feel free to do that. And then also we have a ton of episodes for You Dab Me at Hello, also available on Spotify and anywhere else you can get your streaming podcasts. And we always put up a YouTube video as well. We've been going live for about the last 4 to 5, no, more than that, 6 or 7 episodes or so. And we've seen an increase in viewers. So we thank you guys for joining us and for, joining in on the conversation. That always makes it fun, which is a huge part of why we're staying with live, just so that we can interact with you guys.
Except for tonight, when we talking about wrestling on the night of a wrestling pay-per-view, which we all forgot about. So if you're watching this, you're probably not a wrestling fan, or at least hate WWE. And
that's true. Well, while he's getting back on there, we were talking about wrestling. We've done a couple of episodes about wrestling. We have our best wrestling factions. We have our best women's wrestlers. We also did our best WrestleMania of all time. Who is impressing you guys recently? Let's talk about, I know we're not watching it week by week, but if you were to throw out there currently in the ring, who's impressing you guys?
I mean, we're talking just WWE or?
No, everywhere.
Everywhere? Oh, God. I mean,
I don't know if I'm... Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question.
Yeah. On the
guys,
indies,
I'm trying to keep the podcast going.
Hey, I'm trying to say
take something. It till you make it. Sorry, Andy.
It's all right. I was going to say, Chris Dickinson has been killing it on the indies for the past year and a half. He was supposed to have a big, weekend. I think Rick can.
Oh, Rick's back.
Rick
back.
We're talking about wrestlers that are really exciting us right now and kind of blowing up. And I was talking about Chris Dickinson, which I know you kind of have a little relationship with as well. So, he was supposed to have a big weekend before COVID hit. He's about to go against you name it from Japan, and that kind of went away. So now he's starting to build that back up again with New Japan, and he was doing stuff with NWA, all this kind of all over the place. So how'd you make that connection?
Actually, it was funny. I was going to Beyond shows right from the beginning. I've known Drew for over 20 years. Same deal. We came up through the same backyards and stuff. Drew came back to the area and started putting on Beyond shows, and I was a huge fan of Ring of Honor at the time, specifically Tommaso Ciampa, and Ciampa was facing Dickinson at a show, and I was actually intimidated to meet Tommaso because I was a little nervous. And his character in the ring is pretty serious, so watched Tommaso Ciampa versus Dickinson, and Dickinson just tore him apart right from the bell, and I was so impressed with Dickinson. After that, I don't know if I reached out to him or he reached out to me at one point, but I know I did pitch him a few designs, and he was all for it, which was awesome. I didn't know what I was doing. Over my career, I have not pitched many designs to wrestlers, but I was so impressed that I was I just want to work with this guy. And it come to fruition that we ended up working together for all this time, for the last 6 years. Worked on stuff for him when he was going to England. I'm kind of I was always I'm open to whenever you need something quick or fast or whatever, just hit me up. And then we kind of became friends, and we bonded over kind of metal and stuff like that too. So I ended up working on his band at the time was Native Steve. So we worked on a little project with that. And I'm just happy for him, to see where he's going. At a certain point, I was doing work for him. Santana and Ortiz were part of Team Pazuzu. So I was working for them, Pinky Sanchez and Jaka. So talk about a murderer's row of wrestlers who just all blew up at the same time.
Yeah.
It was amazing to just see how they grew and where they went. Chris and I were talking last year during the COVID, and I knew it hit him hard that he wasn't able to wrestle those Japanese shows because he had just been to Japan and came back. And I don't know if you recall or if you were following on social media, but a bunch of guys came back from shows on the West Coast really sick. Come to find out, a lot of the guys had COVID at the time. They didn't know it.
Oh man.
So that started the whole thing. But I've been talking to I was talking to Chris on and off throughout the year, just saying, "Don't worry, like, you know, when this comes back, you're going to be probably one of the guys as a front runner because you haven't stopped working out and his mental toughness and stuff." And I know he struggled with dealing with that the missed dates, but he was like, "I'm going to come back stronger." And as soon as I heard that he went to Japan, like I was just like, "All right, you know, if he could do it, like if he could get through all that, like the letdown because of this stupid COVID." I can't. What excuses do we have? You know, we should be able to push through this too. So I told him, like, you know, he's an inspiration to me. It's funny. He was on Hannibal's podcast. I don't know if you watched the Hannibal interviews, but I talked to Hannibal once in a while, and I was like, before he even had Chris on, I was like, you should watch out for this guy Chris because he's gonna make a name for him. He's already a name, but he's gonna blow up this year. And sure enough, you know, I'm so proud of what he's done.
He's a beast. Like, I think I started hearing his name mid 2000s. I think he was on some of the first Evolve shows that were run, and I was kind of like, you know, I'd never really heard of him, so I was like, okay. So I was impressed then, and then I hadn't really heard much up until he started popping up in Evolve with Jaka, and you know, they were doing some good stuff as a tag team, and you know, stuff with Beyond, and then his run with Uncharted Territory with Beyond when he just like ran through everybody, like he was basically calling out the top indie names, come here, face me, and then his big match against Daisuke Sekimoto, you know, which was huge for him, and
well, if you take it, if you have like an afternoon sometime, go back to the Beyond shows where you like fought Ciampa, Samoa Joe, Kevin Steen, Masada, just went like a buzz saw through them all, and you know, at the end of the matches, like he gave respect, but at the same time, it was like, I'm here, you know, I'm not getting recognized, but I'm here. You know, I'm going to go through everyone until I'm recognized by everyone. And that mentality just like is really set him to, because I know at one point, like personally, I knew that he was going back to college at one point. He was thinking about becoming a firefighter. What really kind of sucks is that he's the reason why intergender wrestling is, you know, as popular as now in my mind because of his matches with Kimberly at the time.
Yeah.
Where he did it such a devastating like Pazuzu Bomb tour, and she had to even come out and say like, I'm not hurt, like this is what we do, and that really like people like started like putting on ESPN and stuff, going, oh, you know, maybe mention, but this is the reason because these guys can perform with women, and he makes it look believable, and he's always said, you know, put me in with any woman. It's not going to look like a man's beating up a woman. It's like we give and take, and that's what makes the best intergender matches. So, you know, he's worked on so many levels. I'm happy to see him, you know, do what he's doing in Japan because he could do it anywhere. He's done it overseas before. So it just goes to show, like, this COVID's not going to stop the ones that should be doing it. Like I'm saying about Drew too. Like I told Drew, I'm like, you're going to be the leader of this when it comes back. And sure enough, we're seeing like on Tubi now or one of those streaming things that, you know,
Pluto TV.
Yeah, Pluto.
Yeah.
So it's got all Drew's doing commentary and adding content. He's got the Uncharted Territory on there. It's like, you know, there you go. You know, it just so happened that, you know, I could see kind of some of this stuff happening before it happened, and I'm just like, all they need to do is believe in themselves, and they can do it. So it's been wonderful to see that. Same thing with Joey Janela coming out of that. Same thing happened. I was working with Team Pazuzu, and Joey wrote me, and it was like, hey, you know, thinking about doing some T-shirts now, and I'm like, you know, you want me to do it? Like, he's like, yeah. And I just started getting into his work, and I saw him as Starman and just his stuff, and I was like, all right, you know, if you give me a chance, I'll do my best. And we started collaborating for a few years. And when he did his documentary, when he came back from the whole plunge off the roof,
Yeah.
He wrote me, he's like, I want you to do the artwork for the DVD or the documentary. I'm like, are you sure? Like, everybody knows you now.
Yeah.
He showed me respect by going, no, you're my guy that, I went through all this stuff with. So I always respect him for that. And what I say is, like, I work with these guys and then I see them take off, and then I work with the next generation of guys, and hopefully they take off as well. And I'm seeing that, like, some of the guys I'm working with are just, I worked with Chance Young, who's 10 in Dark Order now. He's just doing phenomenal things now. So I was just fortunate to work with these guys when they were just they knew where they wanted to go. They just needed a little help with marketing or branding. So
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it looks like as of today, Drew just announced that Beyond Wrestling is returning for 6 consecutive weeks on IWTV. They're coming with a new show called the Signature Series. They are not supporting our podcast, however, we will still mention it, that they are going to be live on Thursdays at 8 from New Jersey. And so they're really excited to bring Beyond Wrestling back for at least the next 6 weeks. So I think that's really exciting.
that's phenomenal.
So, yeah, I'm just thinking, like, you're saying all this stuff. Like, there's probably so many shows that we probably walk past each other a million times.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember, like, I don't know Drew. Drew doesn't know me, but I remember seeing him at Ring of Honor shows. Like, I remember him, and you'd have a bunch of friends. I remember him because his voice carries very much so, and he's a character. So, like, I remembered seeing him, and then I started finding out about Beyond Wrestling, and I started like seeing him commentary and like around, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that the guy from Ring of Honor, like, that I would see all the time? And then I started, finding out about him, and yeah, man, he's such a creative mind. So.
And if you think about, like, where he started off, he had those matches in those the training centers and stuff where there was no fans, and it was just all the wrestlers around the ring, which put the seeds in for what it is now. It was funny because I was at the Fat before he was even running shows at the Fat. There was a rap artist from Pawtucket. He's very well known as in the indie scene, Sage Francis and B. Dolan.
Yeah. I should have worn my Sage Francis shirt.
They started a wrestling thing every week or every month at the Fat Church of Providence, it was called. So I was a big Sage Francis fan, and they actually had some, like, local wrestlers do wrestling matches in between. And I saw Drew at one of the Church of Providences, maybe the first one, and he was like, there's something to this, I could see, he was like, all right, he was kind of figuring out the logistics, and he just took over the Fat, and he kind of put the Fat on the map for wrestling. And then, now he's just, he would fill that place up in no problem. So he needs to find other places to do his shows now.
Wrestling fans are hardcore when stuff comes through here. It's no different than when a musical act comes through. I mean,
right.
It doesn't happen often. So when it happens, everybody goes, even if they're not a huge fan, it's not something you see, every week. It might be once every 2 months, 3 months, I know there was a point in time where XWA was doing once a month, over in West Warwick. And that was kind of like the most frequent, you would see a show. Because before that, it was, you had to go to Massachusetts every couple of months to go see a Ring of Honor show, or hopefully, something else would come through. So yeah, it's crazy how many hardcore fans you see go to these shows, and you see the same people at every show, because it just didn't happen that often. It's funny that you end up seeing the same faces over and over again.
Like Nate.
Like Nate.
Do you know Nate Meat?
Who's that?
Nate Meat.
Maybe by face. I don't know him by name.
Yeah, he's one of Ed's buds as well. I'm sure we've all crossed paths at some point.
We call him
the last show Andy and I went to go see was Beyond Wrestling. I think right before the pandemic hit. It was up in Worcester. We went to go see it at this little bar where the ring basically touched the front windows and the back of the bar. Like, that was it. And that was actually, I think, my only Beyond show I've been to. But I loved it. It was great. There was a lot of people there that ended up being in NXT shortly after.
Yeah.
And AEW. Best Friends, I think, were there that night, right? And weren't they facing Santana and Ortiz that night?
They were.
Yeah. So it was a great show. And we went to go see Ring of Honor, of all places, at the Providence Convention Center. We saw Ring of Honor there a long time ago, probably, 6 to 8 years ago or so.
Longer, yeah, I think one of it.
That
Kevin
was
Steen, Eddie Kingston in the main event.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I still have pictures. I think it was 13. I think it was 2013 or so, or 12. But yeah, it's always awesome when those little shows come around, because they don't come around very often. We find ourselves at SmackDown and Raw because there's nothing else to go to.
That's it. Right.
Until AEW. Now AEW, we actually still have tickets to AEW show that got canceled 3 times at the Agganis Arena. It's supposed to be this April, but we haven't gotten the cancellation yet, but it's coming. But that was an awesome show. We went to go see AEW Dynamite 2 years ago now or so.
One of their first shows.
Yeah, I think it was the first show in the Northeast.
I think it was the second show overall. It was the tag team tournament.
Yep.
That was good. So Rick, obviously word of mouth is really big for you as far as getting, these kinds of gigs, but what's kind of like the typical interaction for someone who designs shirts for wrestlers? Like, does the wrestler reach out to the designer? Does the designer say, "Hey, I have some thoughts," and then is it just like, "I'll do this for X amount of money," or like what does that whole deal look like?
So I was fortunate to grab the eye of Ring of Honor's. He's formerly of Ring of Honor, Bob Evans, Brutal Bob Evans, known. He goes around the country with his hangs with Bob at the time. We just kind of connected. He had an Iron Man tournament that he was working on, and I pitched an idea on an Iron Man T-shirt. Come to find out, we've gone to school together. We've been in the same public school system. We grew up in the same town. So he ended up hitting me up and going, "Hey, I got this idea about a Hangs With seminar." Came up with 30 different ideas for a Hangs With Bob logo. Basically, it was like a bartering system. Like, he says, "I'll take your name around the country," and that's what he did. So he's given me years worth of work by just going around the country and putting my name on every seminar. Like, "Hey, this is the guy that you go to for a T-shirt." So
that's awesome.
Maybe for the last 10 years, I've probably contacted myself just a handful of wrestlers. Mostly I get contacted through IMs on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and usually get pitched an idea. Some guys just don't know how to talk to people, and they're just like, all of a sudden, like, "I want a logo. How much is it?" And you just can't. You can't come up with a price like that. You got to kind of go over this is what we have to do, and so we kind of you barter. Sometimes you barter for for your name getting out there, and then sometimes you just you just put it out there. This is what my charge is. Charge me whatever, half up front, half when it's done. Never have any complaints. Only had 2 guys kind of screw me over the years, and learned from that. Usually the interaction. But usually the interaction is.
Who was it, and why was it Triple H?
So that's why Cody broke his throne. So
this is for Rick.
So how long, if I come up to you as a professional wrestler and I say, "Make me a T-shirt, here's my ideas," how long does it take from start to finish for me to see that design?
Usually 2 weeks over time. From my calendar is so booked. And it's not that I have, right now in my life, I'm just like, I try to take, a few bookings a month really now. Because now I've kind of been contracted with a certain promotion, and some of their performers kind of take precedent over, just a guy walking off the street that needs a logo. Those guys need turnarounds for TV right away, or gear, or patches, or a new concept that they're working on for a storyline. So they need it right away. And I kind of have a good relationship with that promotion. So I try to give them precedent. It also gives me time to do my own stuff, and it allows me to, be picky and choosy on who I want to work with. I try to vet everyone now, so I'm not working with some guy I've never heard of. I want to know a little background before I can work on something for somebody. So that's basically my turnaround.
So if RJ comes up to you, you're saying no.
Maybe I'll barter for some attention. Yeah.
How do you think I got him? How do you think we got him on the podcast? He made me get
So you've worked with, I mean, again, your short list was, like 40 people or whatever. Do you have, one person, two people, handful of wrestlers that you've worked with that you feel like you've helped more than others, or, anything that you're most proud of? And again, not to downplay any of the work that you've done, saying that you've done bad quality work or anything, but is there anyone that you really feel like, yeah, this is where I'm going to put my time and my effort?
Well, like I was saying, I think the Ring of Honor stuff that I've worked on has gotten me the most attention. Being on the main entrances when these guys come in was shocking to me. Because sometimes I wasn't even told, this is what's going to happen. Sometimes you sign a clause going, they're free to use your artwork on TV, but you don't really know what they're going to use. And I
that could mean gear. That could mean anything, right?
Right. So being able to have some designs on their shop. So if somebody asks me, I'm like, I can go to Ring of Honor shop and you can see some of my designs. Some of the stuff on Pro Wrestling Tees. One that stands out is working with Eddie Edwards when he was in Japan, and he was just about to win the title. Didn't know he was going to win the title or anything like that. I just knew that he was in need of some designs for his store. So that usually tells you that something's going to happen, but you don't really know for sure. And he was the first non-Japanese, I think, wrestler to. I can't remember what title it was at the time, but he was the first one to win that title, so it was a big deal.
Was
it was surprising
GHC?
because it was a friend. Yes. So Teddy Goods, who's a wrestler from Massachusetts, he's a fantastic artist too. He didn't have time because he was on tour. He was wrestling across the country, so he's like, "Hey Rick, can you do a job for somebody?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "It's Eddie Edwards in Japan." I'm like, "Yeah, yes, of course." So,
I think I can squeeze it in.
Yeah.
So be able to have a conversation with him via email from Japan to here is phenomenal to experience. But the Ring of Honor stuff's really stood out because it's still happening. I still work with these guys a lot. So but I feel like I'm a little bit of everyone's kind of journey on the way up to the top or wherever they're going to go. And it's nice to be able to look back and go, I worked for this guy or that guy. Right now, 10 years in now, I forget who I've worked with. When somebody puts up a shirt, I'm like, that's an awesome shirt. And they're like, well, you worked for it. And I'm like,
that's like Metallica saying, "Oh yeah, we wrote Master of Puppets. That was us." Yeah, all right, yeah. That's a good song. Yeah,
it might be it might be the semi concussions that I gave myself doing bumps in the ring, but
putting your head in thumbtacks, that might do it.
yeah. Or the worst bump I ever took was my buddy and his nephew were doing a double clothesline to me, and I just took the odd bump. And I had a semi concussion. So
we had somebody that we back at wrestled probably around the same time as everybody that you did, and we had somebody who liked to bring out a little extra violence and barbed wire and thumbtacks, and then one time he decided to blade, and that didn't go over well. RJ, I don't know if you remember him going into Bill's house, who we've had on the podcast before, and someone had to pour alcohol onto the wound, and we're all outside. We just hear, ah! And after that, we were like, no more. Don't do that again. Oh, man.
Well, I was reffing a match once, and a guy bladed ablated across his forehead, and I didn't want to see that ever again, like that close. So,
God, I can't even get a paper cut without like sweating. Like
I was gonna say, like, I never intentionally want to hurt myself. Never mind for somebody else's entertainment.
Bumps I was okay with, like, on my neck, lower, upper back, like I was fine with that, whatever. But no, cutting myself, that was not happening.
No, not
I'm
good.
too pretty for that. I don't want to cut myself.
Yeah. Okay.
So we actually have a question from a fan. This is from Jesse. What is your favorite wrestler of all time? Andy, what's your favorite wrestler of all time?
I mean, I think I've mentioned before, Taz was up there. Kenta Kobashi. I don't know, low key.
How about you, Mike? Who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
It's still Bret Hart for me.
Nice.
He just had he was one of those guys that, you had your Hulk Hogan's and you had your Macho Mans and everything, but Bret Hart just had, he was the cool guy. He had the style. He gave out his sunglasses to everyone. He's the best there is, the best there is, and best there ever will be.
I think he mentally subdued you with his propaganda of being the best there is, the best there was, and the best there will be.
It worked. It worked. I can't deny it.
How about you, Rick? Who's your favorite wrestler of all time, if you had to answer that right now?
I'm biased, but just knowing my friend Steve Corino and just seeing his work all throughout his career, and he had the NWA title, ECW title, just in and out of the ring. He's still my favorite all time. Growing up, it was Hogan or Jimmy Snuka. But what stood, staying with me all these years and looking back at their career, I think Corino is still my favorite. I can still go watch matches with him and be like, it's still great,
His matches with Homicide and Ring of Honor.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Mine is Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas.
I believe.
I do miss Bo Dallas, but
Bo Dallas he's just collecting a paycheck now. Like,
I know, but he gets to live on a farm with Liv Morgan.
That's why I'm taking RJ's job.
Yeah.
Did something right.
So you've done so much already, with your career, and I'm assuming you plan on continuing to do this. Do you have any more aspirations beyond what you've already done? Like, is there, do you have another goal? You just said you have contractual obligations with, an organization. Is there something else beyond that, like being on their payroll, maybe?
Well, the contractual stuff's kind of crazy because it's like, it's, some stuff you're going to do for, peanuts and stuff could turn out to be decent, but like anything, you're sort of an independent contraction type of deal. Right now, I've spent the last few weeks doing this fan art stuff that I've been working on. I don't know if you noticed, but reaching out to some of my favorite wrestlers that came from me as a WWF at the time that I was really enjoying whatever they're doing. So I reached out to Justin Incredible, who was Aldo and Montoya. So I did like a split art of them. Adam Bomb, who was, I liked him from the AWA era where he was a Night Stalker. So I reached out to him. And I'm just doing this artwork as a, out of respect to them. So just doing my own kind of spin on some artwork for them. And that's kind of my new kind of like, I don't know if you'd call it a hobby, but I'm not trying to make any money off of it. I'm more just doing it kind of for fun. So that's one of my goals, is to just kind of connect with some of these wrestlers that maybe aren't getting the spotlight anymore or deserve to get more noticed for their career. So if I can do that through my art, that's pretty cool while still, doing my other stuff. But it keeps me kind of creative, and I love talking to the older guys. I spent half an hour talking to Mario Mancini, who was a big enhancement talent for the WWF in the 80s. And the stories they can tell you in a half an hour will stick with you forever. So that's payment enough,
that's awesome.
Guys, like you said, Marty Jannetty, know, I talk to Marty Jannetty on and off once in a while through Facebook, just like a quick message, and he'll just like, give a quick reply. Or New Jack is pretty, he'll reply to people too. I get a kick out of that. I'm still a fan at heart. So my goal is just to kind of continue to work with the new generation and still, respect the old generation too. So.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of fans should be doing, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of us have blinders on, and we only see what's happening now, and think that the older stuff it's lame because there was no big spots, or it wasn't as bombastic as it is. There wasn't pyro, people aren't getting thrown off of Titantrons and stuff. So that's definitely a good way to look at things. And, as cheesy as it sounds, know your roots, know where you're coming from.
I mean, what kind of Hell in the Cell match would have been Earthquake versus Dino Bravo?
Yeah. But without those, you don't have the other things, the crazy stuff off of roofs and the Undertaker's last ride and all that stuff. You don't have that unless these other guys did this kind of, stuff in their era was it was big for them,
Right.
There would be no Jeff Hardy without Bobby the Brain Heenan's crazy bumps. I'm just saying. Go back and watch some of the stuff he did.
Yeah.
Dude flailed around like crazy. So I was looking at your T Public page, which we'll give you some time to promote, but wrestling isn't the only thing that you design. What other interests, passions, come with your designs?
Well, with the T Public stuff, it's more like reacting to like pop culture stuff. So if something happens, the nice thing about T Public, it doesn't really cost me anything but time to create artwork. So I make $1 off of a T-shirt, but I get the satisfaction of coming up with an idea and putting it up right away and getting a lot of eyes on it. So it's a nice side hustle stuff that I think any designer should take advantage of, or even a guy like with podcasts or whatever. Get your stuff up there. It allows you to just have some branding up there to market on your podcast or YouTube or Facebook, whatever. It's another outlet for you to get your name known, or your gives you a persona. So I love doing it. I spent time doing it over the year because of the COVID, and with the help of like that Bob Evans, who was kind of like, you should really start promoting your T-shirt stuff too. I took that as a, let's try this a little bit hard, be a little more serious about it. And so that's another part of my, whatever. They're all side hustle deals. So
yeah. Yeah, I like your Star Wars stuff. I'm a big nerd, as evidenced by the wall of video games behind me. So I appreciate that stuff.
I liked the one of a particular person as a clown. I don't even want to say the guy's name on the podcast. So.
We'll just say ex-president.
Yeah.
No, that could be a lot of people.
Exactly. That could be a lot of people.
So RJ, you have some work to do when the baby comes. Is that you're going to get our merchandise up on T Public?
Yeah, I have a ton of time, so I will make sure I get that done. Actually, it's funny. I do have up on the instructions on how to get on T Public, so I threw that up there already when I heard it. But anyways, hey, we want to thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. You just mentioned you're super busy these days, and it looks very cold where you are. So I hope you enjoyed being on the podcast with us. And we loved hearing the stories. And you're a fellow New Englander, so that's always nice too. We interview people on this show and on another one, and I'm constantly talking to people from California and Nashville. So it's nice to speak to someone from the New England area who understands this weather and likes to be out in it, obviously. So
not slang.
Yeah, understands our actual language. Yeah. Is there anywhere that you want to kind of point people to get them to see your stuff? I know TeePublic is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can go on it if they have Instagram, Gimmick by Design. I'm on there. I usually share whatever my new artwork is, or photographs, or promote other wrestlers, like if Chris Dickinson's in Japan, and I noticed there's some kind of highlight of someone that I've worked with. I'll use that as a platform. Facebook, usually I use it just for TeePublic stuff. But I can, they can find me on either of those. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use it that often. But those are the two main places.
All right, great. Well, again,
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you can hang on after we get off live, we'll kind of conversate before you head out. But for the people who are listening live or listening later on Spotify or YouTube, thank you for joining us. Andy, what time is it?
Oh, okay.
One more minute till the end of the night. But how could we end when it feels so right?
One of these days,
We
I'm
also-
actually gonna know what you're talking about when you do that.
I was still confused.
Yeah,
I
it's
still don't know.
that's just a side thing that Andy and I do. We also do music. Catch that VRAP and RJ Gunn Music on YouTube and Spotify as well. Again, a huge thank you to Gimmick by Design with Rick Fonseca. Thank you again for joining us, and everyone have a great night. This is Three Dads, One Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but here we are anyway.